Look at your life right now. I mean, really look at it. Your career, your house, your car payment, the monthly subscriptions, the mortgage, the LinkedIn title, the general shape of how your days are supposed to go. Take all of that in. Hold it for a second. Now, here's a question that's going to bother you for the rest of this video. Ready? You didn't choose any of that. A 20-year-old kid with zero real-world experience chose all of it for you. A version of you that had never been fired, never been through a bad relationship, never paid a bill, never sat in traffic for 90 minutes to get to a job he hated, that version of you sat down with a college major brochure and a head full of optimism and mapped out your entire adult life. And now, 15 years later, you are dragging the full weight of his decisions behind you like a 2,000-pound anchor. And the wildest part, you are terrified to cut the chain. That 20-year-old didn't know anything. He didn't know what a 70-hour work week feels like in year 9. He didn't know what it feels like to answer emails on Christmas morning. He didn't know that a 6-figure salary can feel completely hollow when you wake up every single Monday morning with a fist in your chest. He picked the career because it sounded impressive at family dinners. He picked the trajectory because his guidance counselor said the industry was growing. He picked the identity because it was the one that got nods of approval from adults who also picked wrong. He is your past. He is not your boss. But right now, today, he is running your life. Every choice you make to stay in the industry, stay in the city, stay in the lifestyle, is you outsourcing your future to a kid who didn't even know how to do his own taxes yet. This video is about one idea, a psychological trap called the sunk cost fallacy. And once you understand how it works, you will never look at your career, your debt, or your identity the same way again. Let's get into it.
Before we get to careers and debt and all the big, heavy stuff, I want you to understand this concept at its smallest and most harmless level, because once you see it here, you'll recognize it everywhere. You buy a movie ticket, $20. You sit down, the film starts, and within the first 20 minutes, it becomes obvious that this movie is genuinely terrible. The writing is bad, the acting is worse. You're not entertained. You are, in fact, slightly annoyed. So what do? Most people stay. They sit in that theater for another hour and 40 minutes watching a bad movie they're not enjoying, because in their head, leaving feels like wasting the $20. They think, I already paid for it, I might as well get something out of it. Here's the logic problem with that. The $20 is already gone. It was gone the moment the transaction went through at the ticket counter. Whether you sit in that theater for 2 more hours or walk out right now, you do not get the $20 back. It doesn't matter what you do next. That money is spent. So when you stay in the bad movie, you're not saving the $20. You're just also losing 2 more hours of your life. You're now out $20 and 2 hours instead of just $20. The sunk cost, the money you already spent, should have zero influence over what you do next because it's gone. It is a past event. It is done. It cannot be undone. And yet, it is driving your present moment decision-making. This is the sunk cost fallacy, the irrational tendency to continue investing time, money, or energy into something, not because it's still worth it, but because of how much you've already put in. Economists have studied this. Psychologists have studied this. It's deeply wired into human behavior. The reason we do it is because our brains are built to minimize loss, and admitting that something didn't pan out, admitting that your investment was wrong, feels like loss. It triggers the same part of your brain as physical pain. So you stay. You keep doubling down. You convince yourself it'll get better, not because the evidence supports it, but because leaving feels like admitting failure. Keep that in mind, because we're about to scale this up to a decade of your life.
Let's talk about your career. Specifically, let's talk about the decade you've already sunk into it. Here's a story you'll recognize. At 18 or 19, you picked a direction. Maybe your parents nudged you toward it. Maybe it paid well on paper. Maybe you just needed to pick something, so you picked the thing that made the most sense at the time. You went to college, you got the degree, and you entered the industry. Then you climbed. Slowly, methodically, you climbed. The entry-level job, then the mid-level role, then a manager title, then maybe a director slot. And with each rung, the salary got a little better, the business cards got a little fancier, and the path forward got a little more defined. You built a reputation inside this specific world. You know the players, you know the jargon, you know how the game is played. And at 35, somewhere between your third cup of coffee and another pointless status meeting, it hit you. You don't just dislike this job, you are not suited for this life. The thing you've been doing for 10 years, the thing you've organized your entire adult existence around, is not what you want. It may have never been what you wanted. And the thought of spending the next 30 years doing more of the same makes something inside you go very quiet. But you don't quit. And the reason your brain gives you is this: if I quit now, I just wasted 10 years of my life. Let me stop right there, because that sentence feels logical, but it is not. It is the sunk cost fallacy in its most dangerous form. The 10 years are already spent. They are gone. They are done. You cannot get them back by staying. Staying in a miserable career for another 30 years does not retroactively validate the first 10. It just steals the next 30. Think about the math like this. Let's say you have a pot with a hole in it and you've already lost 10 gallons through the hole. You don't pour in another 30 gallons trying to recover what already drained out. You fix the pot, or you get a new pot. The 10 years gave you something, by the way, and we'll come back to that in Act 6. But the idea that you are obligated to keep going in a direction that is making you miserable because of time you've already spent, that's not loyalty to your past. That's a hostage situation, and you're both the captor and the captive. You are not protecting a decade of work by stating. You are sacrificing 3 more decades to honor it.
All right, so why don't men just quit the career they hate? We talked about the psychological piece, but there is a very physical, very concrete reason that most men can't just walk away, even when they want to. The lifestyle. Here's how it usually unfolds. You get the corporate job, the salary is real, the trajectory looks solid, but the job is grinding you down. It's soul-draining work and you know it. So you compensate, not consciously, at least not at first, but you start to build a life that rewards the suffering. You buy the big house in the good neighborhood because you've earned it. You buy the expensive truck or the luxury sedan because you deserve something for putting up with all of this. You go on the nice vacations. You do the renovations. You set up the lifestyle that says to everyone looking that the sacrifice was worth it. And now something very mechanical happens. The lifestyle costs money. Not a little money, a lot of money. The mortgage on a house designed to look like success doesn't leave a lot of room for career exploration. The $900 a month truck payment doesn't leave a lot of room for a pay cut. The private school tuition, the HOA fees, the restaurant habits, the subscriptions, the aesthetic of a life that says, I made it. All of that adds up to a number that you now have to hit every single month just to stay afloat. That number is the lock on your prison door. You can't take the interesting job that pays 60% less. You can't take the risk on the business idea you've been sitting on for 3 years. You can't go back to school or take a year to figure things out or move somewhere that actually excites you because the lifestyle requires the salary, and the salary requires the career, and the career requires you to stay. The terrifying thing is that most men built the lifestyle as a coping mechanism. The house and the truck weren't just purchases. They were proof to themselves and everyone around them that the grind was paying off, that the unhappiness had a point, that the years of doing something they didn't love were adding up to something real. But the house doesn't make you happy either. The truck doesn't fill the emptiness on a Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. in a meeting you've already had 40 times. You now have 2 problems, a career you resent and a debt structure that makes it nearly impossible to change. The sunk cost isn't just time anymore. It's now got a dollar sign attached to it, and that makes it feel even more immovable.
Let's talk about the part nobody wants to talk about, your ego. In this culture, at this particular moment in history, a man's value is almost entirely communicated through 2 things, his job title and his income. That's the dominant social metric for adult men. Not how present you are with your kids, not how healthy you are, not how much you actually enjoy your life, your title, and your number. This starts early. When you're a kid, adults ask you what you want to be when you grow up, not what kind of life you want to live, what you want to be, the identity question. And the answers that get rewarded, doctor, lawyer, engineer, executive, all have one thing in common. They're impressive titles. They signal hierarchy. They communicate to the room that this person is serious and accomplished and worth paying attention to. So by the time you're 35 and you've spent a decade accumulating a title that gets a certain reaction in certain rooms, that title has become inseparable from your identity. You're not a person who works in marketing. You are the director of marketing. It's how you introduce yourself. It's how you're perceived. It's the version of you that exists in every professional and semi-professional context you navigate. And now imagine telling people you're leaving it. Imagine what happens at the next family gathering, the next reunion, the next dinner with your peer group when someone asks what you're doing and you say, "I left the corporate thing. I'm learning carpentry," or "I'm starting over in a different field," or "I honestly don't know yet, but I couldn't stay." For a lot of men, the facial expressions alone in that moment are enough to stop them from ever making the leap. The slight pause before the polite response, the look exchanged between two people across the table, the well-meaning but devastating, "Oh, wow, that's interesting. Are you sure?" That temporary discomfort, the social recalibration of your status, is the final lock. It's the sunk cost of the ego. You've spent years investing in a version of yourself that commands a certain level of respect in your social circle. Walking away from the career feels like walking away from that respect. And for men in particular, whose self-worth has been tightly bound to external achievement since boyhood, that loss can feel existential. Here is the part that nobody will say to your face, but I will. Men will work themselves into poor health, poor relationships, and deep personal misery just to avoid the temporary embarrassment of changing their minds. The ego would rather spend 30 more years in quiet suffering than admit, out loud to other people, that the original choice was wrong. That's not strength. That's a trap, and the ego built it.
All right, let's deal with the biggest lie. If I change paths now, I'll have to start from scratch. No, you won't. And I want to be really specific about why that sentence is factually wrong, because it's the last piece of mental furniture blocking the exit. Starting from scratch means you have nothing. It means you are a blank slate. It means a 17-year-old with no experience and no context and no frame of reference for what hard actually means. That is what starting from scratch looks like. What you have after 10 or 15 years of professional life is the exact opposite of that. You have a decade plus of knowing how organizations actually work, not from a textbook, but from being inside them when they were under pressure. You know how to run a meeting, manage competing priorities, communicate across departments, sell ideas to people who don't want to hear them, and execute against deadlines when everything is on fire. That skill set is not industry specific. That skill set is human infrastructure. The communication skills transfer, the resilience transfers, the ability to deal with difficult people, that transfers everywhere. The project management instincts, the pattern recognition, the understanding of what clients actually want versus what they say they want, all of it comes with you. It cannot be unlearned. It cannot be left at the desk when you hand in your badge. What you are actually doing when you change direction is not starting over. You are starting forward with everything you've accumulated pointed in a new direction. The metaphor isn't erasing a whiteboard. The metaphor is turning a ship. The ship doesn't vanish. It doesn't go back to port. It just changes heading. Everything on board comes with it. Now, I'm not going to pretend there's no adjustment period. There is. If you move into a completely different field, there will be things you don't know yet. There will be moments where you feel like the newest and least experienced person in the room. That's real. But the context you bring to those moments is completely different from someone who is actually starting from scratch. Your learning curve is different. Your capacity to absorb and apply new information is different. You're not a blank slate. You're a foundation. And here's the other thing. The people in your new field who are 22 years old, they're not competition. They're not beating you to anything. You're not in a race with them. They're operating on a completely different timeline with completely different life circumstances. Stop comparing your chapter 15 to their chapter 1. The starting from scratch fear is one more way the sunk cost thinking distorts your perception. It makes the past feel like everything, like the only valuable thing, because if you're starting over, all of that past value evaporates. But you're not starting over. You're just redirecting existing value. That's a completely different thing. You don't throw away a decade of your life by changing what you do with the next one. You build on it. The question is, toward what?
I want to flip the question on you for the last part of this video. We've been talking about the sunk cost of leaving, all the time, money, and identity you'd be wasting by changing direction. But I want you to think for a minute about the sunk cost of staying. Because staying isn't free. Staying has a price, and most men never actually add it up because it's paid slowly, in small daily transactions that don't show up on any balance sheet. The cost of staying is Sunday night anxiety that has become so normal you've stopped noticing it. The cost of staying is a relationship with your kids where dad is physically present but clearly somewhere else in his head most of the time. The cost of staying is the slow calcification of your curiosity, the way you used to have ideas and energy for things, and now most of your mental bandwidth is absorbed by a career you're just maintaining, not building. The cost of staying is health. There is a significant and well-documented connection between chronic workplace dissatisfaction and physical health outcomes. When your nervous system is in low-grade stress mode for years at a time, things break down. Sleep degrades. Blood pressure climbs. The body keeps a record of what the mind is going through. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to make you honest with yourself about what the safe choice is actually costing. Because from the outside, staying looks responsible. It looks stable. It looks like the right adult decision. But lived from the inside, over a decade, it looks very different. And the man who stayed for 30 more years because he was afraid of what people would think, that man does not get a refund. Here's the actual reframe I want you to walk away with. The question is not, is it too late to change? The question is, what's the cost of not changing? You are 35. If you're statistically average, you have somewhere between 40 and 50 years of life ahead of you. 40 to 50 years. The life you've already lived, the one the 20-year-old designed, is not the majority of your time. It is not even close to the majority of your time. The majority is ahead of you, and the only question that matters is what you want to do with it. Cutting the chain doesn't mean abandoning responsibility. It doesn't mean quitting your job tomorrow with no plan. It doesn't mean blowing up your life in a dramatic gesture that creates new problems. Cutting the chain means making the decision, the quiet, clear-eyed internal decision that the 20-year-old who set the original heading is not in charge anymore. You are. It means sitting down and asking, what would I actually build if I weren't trying to protect a sunk cost? What would I do with my skills, my time, and my energy if I wasn't trying to justify the last decade by grinding through the next 3? That's not a small question. That's the question. And it will feel uncomfortable when you first ask it, because you've been trained to think about your future in terms of career tracks and salary bands and industry trajectories. Asking an open, honest question about what you actually want without the framework of what makes sense given where I've already been can feel almost irresponsible, like you're doing something wrong by even considering it. You're not doing something wrong. You're doing something long overdue. The sunk cost fallacy tells you that the past justifies the future, that you're obligated to continue a direction because of how far you've already gone. But past investment, no matter how large, is not a compass. It is not a plan. It is not a reason to keep walking in the wrong direction. The 20-year-old made the best call he could with the information he had. That's fair. That's all any of us can do at 20. But you are not 20 anymore. You have information he didn't.
You know what the road he put you on actually looks like from mile 10, from mile 15. And if you wouldn't take his advice about anything else in your life right now, you don't have to take his advice about this. The money already spent is gone. The years already invested are gone. The version of you that sat in that movie theater hoping it would get better is in the past. The only question is what you do in the next hour, the next day, the next year. You can stay in the bad movie. Nobody's stopping you. You can drag that bronze statue through the desert for another 30 years, and it will look from certain angles like discipline, like commitment, like a man who kept his word. Or you can cut the chain, not because the past didn't matter, but because the future matters more. I'm Dollar Dave. That's the math. We'll talk again soon.